Oh my God! You have a lot of nerve showing up here with him.
Okay. What are you talking about?
You know exactly what I'm talking about. I heard about your little date.
It was just coffee.
Please, to quote the great George Costanza, coffee is not coffee. Coffee is sex.
Brooks Rattigan, a high school senior on the cusp of graduation, harbored a massive dream. He was hell-bent on becoming absolutely loaded. His aspirations weren't just a whim. They stemmed from his family's past, as his dad, once a booming businessman, had gone belly-up ages ago. With his parents divorced, Brooks was navigating life with just his father, and truthfully, their relationship had been pretty rocky ever since the split. At school, Brooks's ride or die was his close pal, Murph. This kid was a bona fide coding whiz, practically a wizard when it came to whipping up applications. One afternoon, as the final bell rang, Brooks found himself gawking at the slick BMW that belonged to his classmate, Reese. Just as he was soaking it all in, Reese himself appeared, and a silent thought echoed in Brooks's mind. How on earth could he ever get his hands on a sweet ride like that? Back home, his dad offered him a meal, but Brooks, still feeling that emotional chasm between them, politely declined. After shedding his school duds, Brooks headed out to his part-time gig at a local fast food joint, hustling to pad his meager pocket money. Murph was also punching the clock there. During their shift, Brooks spilled the beans, confiding in Murph about his audacious plan to apply to Yale University. He knew it was a pricey endeavor, a real stretch, but Yale was teeming with kids whose parents were bona fide entrepreneurs. Brooks figured if he could just rub elbows with that crowd, maybe he'd catch the entrepreneur bug himself and finally strike it rich. Mid-chat, Reese and one of his buddies rolled in to order some grub. While they waited for their food, Reese casually suggested to his friend that he might want to take his cousin Celia to the school shindig that night, even offering to cover the costs and lend his BMW for the occasion. Brooks, always listening for an opportunity, didn't miss a beat. He immediately piped up, volunteering his services, adding that he wasn't just willing to escort her, but was also ready to play the part of Celia's fake boyfriend. Reese, perhaps amused by Brooks' unexpected eagerness, readily agreed. That evening, Brooks pulled up to Celia's house in Reese's borrowed BMW, and her parents, all smiles and warmth, gave him a hearty welcome. It wasn't long before Celia made her grand appearance, immediately complaining about being coerced into attending the school party. Her folks, however, were unwavering, insisting that it was for her own good, emphasizing that girls shouldn't be tomboys forever and needed to embrace their beauty and soak up their youth. So begrudgingly, Celia relented. On the drive to the party, Celia floated the idea of ditching the formal event altogether, openly admitting her aversion to the elite school's social scene. She grumbled about how all her friends were just rich kids whose sole purpose seemed to be endless partying, constantly snapping photos, showing off and plastering it all over social media. She was completely fed up with that shallow circle, but Brooks, ever focused on his newfound job, wasn't having any of it. He was there to fulfill his duties, and that meant giving her to the party. At the bash itself, Celia's frustration only deepened as her earlier observations proved uncannily accurate. Instead of actually enjoying the party, everyone else seemed totally engrossed in taking pictures. Brooks, ever the professional, smoothly asked Celia to dance. They were actually having a good time when, out of nowhere, the song shifted to a slow tune. Without missing a beat, Brooks, fully committed to his role, continued to gracefully lead Celia across the dance floor. In the thick of the party, Brooks found his gaze fixated on a truly stunning girl named Shelby. His focus utterly shattered. He accidentally stepped squarely on Celia's foot, causing her to wince. As he knelt to check on Celia's ankle, Shelby herself strolled over. Offering a polite greeting, she casually extended an invitation to leave the current shindig and head to another party at her place, asking if they wanted to tag along. Brooks, ever the smooth operator, quickly spun a tale, explaining that while he would love to, Celia was nursing a sore ankle and just wanted to head home. So just like that, Brooks found himself leaving the party too. Back at Celia's place, Brooks was genuinely miffed. It turned out Celia could walk perfectly fine on her own. Her injury had been nothing but an act. He couldn't help but feel played, especially since he'd been so keen on getting closer to Shelby. Celia, ever the blunt one, simply shrugged it off, advising him to just forget about Shelby. She asserted that Brooks was totally not Shelby's type, given that she was the daughter of a wealthy socialite, making it clear that someone like Brooks wouldn't stand a chance. Celia warned that it was better to give up now, rather than end up getting hurt. As their bickering worn down, Celia's father stepped out, and Celia herself slipped back into the house. With his fake date assignment officially wrapped, Brooks returned Reese's sleek BMW. Reese expressed his gratitude for Brooks accompanying his cousin. Before Brooks could leave, a burning question popped into his head, and he just had to ask Reese how he managed to snag such an expensive car when his parents weren't exactly rolling in dough. Reese, with a casual air, simply explained that he wasn't some spoiled rich kid, and that the car was a result of his own hard work and efforts. Reese's words hit Brooks like a lightning bolt, sparking an immediate, brilliant business idea. The very next afternoon, while slinging burgers at the fast food restaurant, Brooks excitedly pitched his newfound venture to Murph. He wanted to launch a fake dating service, a concept he felt had real potential. He asked Murph, his coding guru, to help him build the application. Ever the loyal friend, Murph readily agreed to lend his considerable talents. About a month later, the application was finally ready to roll. In Brooks's room, Murph gave him the full rundown on how the app worked, making it clear it was as simple as ordering food online. Murph even threw in a bonus. He developed another application that would, with every new order, display Brooks's accumulating savings for Yale University, keeping his ultimate goal front and center. And to top it all off, he had already taken the liberty of sharing the fake dating application across various social media platforms, saving Brooks the hassle of promoting it himself. All he had to do now was sit back and wait for the orders to pour in. Hearing Murph's initiative and seeing his dedication, Brooks was genuinely touched and felt a surge of renewed motivation. He was incredibly grateful to have such a good friend like Murph, someone who constantly supported his wildest dreams. That very night, as Brooks was scrolling through Shelby's social media, a notification popped up on his phone. His first fake date order had just come in. Brooks was ecstatic. Week after week, Brooks's fledgling +1 service started to really take off, with more and more girls queuing up to hire his unique talents. One breezy morning, en route to school, his phone buzzed. It was Celia. She was ringing him up to request his services again for a party slated for that very night at Shelby's place. Celia shared that she had clicked with a guy there, someone she was genuinely interested in, and she wanted Brooks to help her connect with him. Brooks, eyeing the chance to rub shoulders with Shelby again, agreed on the spot. He also reminded her that for any future bookings, she could simply order him through the app, making things official. Later that afternoon at the fast food joint, Brooks, still buzzing from the thought of seeing Shelby, tried to chat about her with Murph, but Murph wasn't having any of it. With a surprising bite in his tone, Murph called Brooks out, suggesting that ever since his business had found its groove, Brooks had gotten a bit big for his britches. Murph pointed out that despite seeing each other daily at school, Brooks had barely spoken to him. Hearing that, a wave of guilt washed over Brooks. As an immediate apology, he promised to treat Murph to an unlimited gaming spree at the arcade the following night, a peace offering to smooth things over. That evening, Brooks and Celia rolled up to Shelby's house for the party. When Shelby greeted them at the door, Celia, playing her part to the hilt, casually mentioned that her boyfriend Brooks was a super rich kid who lived in an exclusive elite housing complex. She was subtly trying to pique Shelby's interest in Brooks. Once Shelby had moved on, Celia pointed out the guy she was keen on. Seeing Celia's shy, lingering gaze at the fellow, Brooks knew it was his cue to step in and work his magic. He smoothly maneuvered Celia towards the guy, facilitating an introduction. And just like that, after a quick hello, Celia and her newfound acquaintance hit it off instantly, discovering they shared the same passion for a particular hobby. They quickly became so engrossed in conversation that Brooks found himself completely out of the loop, practically ignored. Brooks felt a wave of relief that his task was successfully completed, yet a tiny pang of something else, a flicker of jealousy unexpectedly flared within him. As Brooks grabbed a drink, Shelby, sensing an opportunity, sidled up to him. Celia's earlier planting of the rich kid seed had clearly done the trick. Shelby seemed genuinely intrigued, engaging Brooks in conversation that felt like a subtle courtship. After their chat, Brooks found Celia sitting alone, a happy smile on her face. Celia revealed that the guy she'd met had asked her out for coffee the next night. Brooks felt a genuine surge of happiness for her. As they were getting ready to leave, Brooks confessed his deep desire to get into Yale University. Celia, ever helpful, immediately offered to pull some strings, mentioning that her father was tight with the Yale dean and could arrange an appointment for Brooks the very next afternoon. Brooks was beyond grateful. The following afternoon, Celia personally escorted Brooks to the formidable gates of Yale University. After what felt like an eternity in the waiting room, Brooks was finally called into the dean's office. At first, his nerves were jangling like a loose wire, but he'd had a stroke of luck the previous night. He'd managed to dig up the dean's somewhat obscure hobby, beekeeping. Brooks casually dropped into the conversation that he, too, had a small bee farm. The dean, initially stoic and somewhat detached, instantly transformed. His face lit up with warmth, and he launched into a lengthy, animated discussion about bees, completely captivated by Brooks's shared interest. After the interview, the dean was so genuinely friendly that he even personally escorted Brooks out of his office. Before departing, Brooks, still playing the part, mentioned that if he landed a spot at Yale, he'd be sure to bring the best honey straight from his humble bee farm. Celia, standing nearby, couldn't help but look bewildered, silently wondering when on earth this kid had acquired a bee farm. Outside the sprawling campus, Brooks confessed to Celia that his whole bee farm story had been a complete fabrication, a necessary lie to try and charm his way into acceptance. He explained that if he'd managed to get in, he was determined to hit the books hard, forge a path to becoming a hugely successful businessman, and ultimately buy himself a BMW, just like Reese's. Hearing this, Celia's eyes widened in surprise, and she then dropped a truth bomb. Reese wasn't some self-made entrepreneur. The fancy BMW he flaunted had actually been a gift from his mother's wealthy new boyfriend. Celia, ever the voice of reason, gently advised Brooks that chasing someone else's image or being consumed by jealousy wasn't the way to go. It was far better to just be himself. Brooks, hearing this unexpected revelation, instantly fell silent, taking it all in. That night, as planned, Brooks, Celia, and Murph met up at a local restaurant. Brooks was ready to make good on his promise and treat Murph to an all-you-can-play night at the arcade. But suddenly, a new order for the Sidekick app pinged on Brooks's phone. With a sigh, Brooks apologized to a visibly disappointed Murph, explaining that their plans would have to be postponed. He had a gig that he needed to fulfill. Murph was visibly disappointed with him. After parting ways with Brooks, Celia headed to a cozy cafe to meet the guys she'd clicked with at the party. Initially, Celia was genuinely thrilled to be on a proper date with someone she found interesting. However, as their conversation stretched on, a creeping sense of boredom began to set in. The guy, it seemed, was perfectly content to talk endlessly about himself without ever once bothering to ask anything about Celia. The next afternoon, Brooks called Celia. Since Celia had seemingly found a genuine connection at the party, Brooks proposed a new scheme. They would stage a dramatic breakup at Shelby's upcoming birthday party that night. He reasoned that if people still thought they were dating, it would put a damper on his chances with Shelby and her new acquaintance's chances with Celia. Even though Celia's interest in the guy had already waned, and she felt a faint prick of jealousy at Brooks's single-minded pursuit of Shelby, she agreed to help him out. That night at Shelby's lavish birthday bash, Celia, as per the plan, strategically positioned herself close to the guy she had been dating. Not long after, Brooks made his entrance, expertly feigning shock and then publicly accusing Celia of cheating on him. But in the heat of their staged argument, Brooks's words became unnecessarily harsh, cutting too deep. Celia, genuinely hurt by his exaggerated performance, felt a sharp pang in her heart. She immediately slapped him across the face, a raw, spontaneous reaction, and then spun on her heel, storming out of the party. Brooks was left standing there, silenced by his own misstep, a heavy weight of guilt settling over him. Outside, Shelby approached, her concern evident. She tried to console Brooks, assuring him there was no need to be upset and that he would easily find someone much better to replace Celia. Seizing the unexpected opportunity, Brooks then boldly asked Shelby if she would be willing to be his replacement. With a charming smile, Shelby replied that she would indeed. That very night, the two of them officially began dating. The next morning at school, Brooks tried to greet Murph, but Murph, still deeply disappointed and clearly holding a grudge from the postponed outing, simply walked past him, giving him the cold shoulder. That afternoon, Brooks picked up a new client, an elderly woman. As he accompanied her for a walk, the woman shared poignant memories of her late husband, who used to constantly take her out. Since his passing, she had mostly stayed home alone. She recalled how he always had a joke ready, effortlessly making her laugh. During their heartfelt conversation, the woman offered a profound piece of advice. Knowing if you were with the right person was simple. If talking to them felt like tuning into a boring, static-filled old radio, then they weren't the one. But if the conversation felt like listening to a beautiful, soaring orchestra concert, then you were undoubtedly in love. The next night, Brooks headed out to pick up Shelby for another school party. Before hitting the main event, Shelby suggested they grab a bite at an exorbitantly expensive restaurant. While waiting for their gourmet food, Brooks casually inquired about Shelby's post-graduation plans. Shelby then launched into an elaborate, detailed outline
of her life, stretching all the way into old age. To Brooks, however, her meticulously planned future sounded incredibly dull, a stark contrast to his own ambitious drive to build an empire from the ground up. After their meal, they continued on to the party. There, Brooks noticed Celia dancing by herself, seemingly lost in her own world. As Brooks and Shelby searched for a place to settle in, one of Shelby's friends greeted them. It turned out this friend had been a previous client of Brooks's service. Cornered and with the cat out of the bag, Brooks had no choice but to finally tell Shelby the truth about his fake dating business. He didn't just stop there. He also confessed that he wasn't actually rich, and in fact, his family was far from it. Shelby was utterly stunned by the revelation. In that very instant, she delivered the ultimate breakup line, cutting ties with him then and there. Crushed and deflated, Brooks trudged home, seeing his father watching TV and desperately needing someone to talk to. Brooks did something he hadn't done in ages. For the first time, he truly confided in his dad. He poured out his entire complicated saga, from the app to his aspirations of getting into Yale, and even the messy stories involving Murph, Celia, and Shelby. He desperately sought his father's advice on what he should do next. His dad, having patiently listened to his son's whirlwind of troubles, expressed immense pride. He told Brooks he had truly grown up and advised him to tackle his problems one by one, to focus on what was most important right now. Back in his room, Brooks kept replaying his father's words, letting them sink in. The next day at school, Brooks approached Murph, cautiously trying to greet him again. To his immense relief, Murph finally broke his silent treatment. Brooks then offered a heartfelt apology, admitting that he had unknowingly become arrogant lately and had completely forgotten about his best friend. Murph, touched by the genuine apology, readily forgave him, and their friendship began to mend. That afternoon after school, Brooks ran into Reese. Reese mentioned that he had heard about the incident with Shelby, telling Brooks not to get too upset about it. But when Reese casually offered to lend Brooks his car again, Brooks surprisingly refused. With a calm demeanor, Brooks subtly hinted that Reese actually had a more serious problem brewing. If his mother's affair were to come to light and lead to a divorce, Reese might just lose the very car he was so proud of. Reese, hearing this unexpected and accurate warning, immediately fell silent, clearly caught off guard. The following day, Brooks and Celia met at a cafe. Brooks sincerely apologized for his harsh words during their staged breakup at the party. He shared that, thanks to this whole ordeal, he had learned some incredibly valuable lessons. He had realized that anything truly special had to start with honesty. When one lied, he mused they weren't just lying to others, but ultimately they were lying to themselves. He also admitted that he had only just recognized that something truly special had been right under his nose all this time. Brooks then handed a letter to Celia and quietly left. As Celia read the letter, she was deeply touched. In it, Brooks poured out his true feelings for her. He spoke of how he admired her choice to appear simple and natural, despite her family's wealth, a stark contrast to other girls constantly striving for superficial beauty just to gain social media fame. He wrote about how every time they chatted, he felt genuinely happy, describing it like listening to a beautiful orchestra concert. Brooks expressed his hope that Celia felt the same way. Reading his heartfelt confession, Celia couldn't help but smile. That night back at home, Brooks received another order for his +1 service. But this time, completely uninterested, he declined the offer. Not long after, another order pinged on his phone. This one simply instructed him to open the door. When he did, to his surprise, standing there was Celia. With a warm smile, Celia explained that she wanted to order his service. But this time, she clarified, she didn't want a fake boyfriend. She wanted a real one. Because, she echoed his own newfound wisdom, something truly special had to start with honesty.